Goliath is an RMC wooden coaster located at Six Flags Great America, built in 2014, and for even being the fourth RMC ever built, it is still delivering great rides today. As when it opened, it was the fastest wooden coaster in the world, only to be beat by Lightning Rod, which by 1 mile per hour 2 years later in 2016. Now, even though it has all those stats to it, it is widely known as one of the worst RMCs, and it is, in my opinion, the worst RMC, even though it is a very fun ride, which just tells you that no matter what, all RMCs are going to be great. But that's what I'll be doing in today's video, my full in-depth review on Goliath. But most importantly, before we start, if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more videos on coasters often. Also, if you want to see more, make sure to follow our social media pages for updates and much more. But now that is out of the way, let's look at some of the stats. To start out, it is of course located at Six Flags Great America. It is 165 feet tall, very good of course for a wooden coaster, but what's really interesting is that the drop is 15 feet taller at 180 feet, mostly due to that tunnel at the bottom of the first drop. It is 72 miles per hour, the second fastest wooden coaster in the world. Though let me tell you, is still very impressive, especially for a wooden coaster, but then it has two inversions, both being very solid. They are a dive loop and 0G stall, and then finally, it has a track length of 3,100 feet, which is pretty average, especially for how short the ride is. This was a ground-up RMC, and it takes up a very small amount of space, and that does mean the ride is not really long at all, which is one of the complaints to this coaster, that it does not have a long duration. It is over very quickly, but it was designed to be a short ride in the tight space it takes up, so if you come into this coaster expecting a short ride, then it won't really be the biggest of a complaint. And this coaster does put that ride time to use, as it is a really fun coaster, even though it has some parts to it they're not great at all, which that is the roughness. This is definitely the roughest RMC in my opinion. That's really unfortunate, as there are several parts of this coaster that are pretty rough, especially after their first drop and in between the elements, mostly in the tunnels. And that really was disappointing, because this ride would be better if it was not really rough, and would be by far the best ride in the park, even though it still may be that by a little. But this coaster is definitely still very fun, as all the elements are great, especially the inversions, being the dive loop and 0G stall, which was actually the first coaster to include a 0G stall, which is really cool. But let's walk up to the ride. To start off, this coaster looks massive, especially that lift hill and the drop, which is really cool. That most of the structure is gone. The same thing they use and they're doing on Iron Gwazi. It is a steel structure with wooden track, and it just looks very intimidating, which is awesome. And overall, this coaster just looks very stunning with that orange track and all the elements put together. But you'll walk into this station where you'll find these really cool trains, as they are standard RMC trains. The standard seatbelt and lap bar that are most of the time comfortable, though the seatbelt can get in the way a little. Same with all the other RMCs with these trains. They do actually have a single rider line, which is of course very helpful if you are a single rider, and for what row you would want to sit in, I would sure go for the back. Though it is more bumpy there, it still delivers way more on the drop and the intensity. But you will leave the station, take a turn to your left, and go up that massive 165 foot tall lift hill that is pretty steep as you start going up it. But then you'll get to the top, experience some amazing views, especially if you look to your left with the views of the park. But then you'll plummet down 85 degrees, very close to vertical, and obviously those 5 degrees won't really make a difference, so it feels like you're just going straight down. And for sure this drop is way better in the back, as you just get pulled down at the drop. It's definitely one of the best RMC drops. But you'll go into the first tunnel. This ride does have a decent amount of tunnels, but next you'll head up into this very weird turn, but it is very fun. It's almost like you get some sideways airtime, but then is a nice airtime hill, pretty much the only. You have two airtime moments on this coaster, and this is definitely the superior one. Next is a very fun dive loop. This is actually the only dive loop on a wooden coaster, and for sure delivers in just pure fun as you come into this inversion. A little late, but that just makes it even more whippier. You will travel up into the first 0G stall of its kind. Now, of course, it is very fun. I absolutely love 0G stalls. It's almost like an airtime hill, but flipped upside down. It is really cool. But then is your last turn, very similar to the first one. one, but it is a little smaller and definitely is more slower than the first one, but then you'll end out the coaster popping into the brakes with some, decent airtime. Now, overall, I like this coaster a lot, even though it has some roughness here and there, but still, it is my least favorite RMC, but it is a really fun coaster. And for its overall score, I will give it an 8.5 out of 10. So, what do you think of Goliath, located at Six Flags Great America? Make sure to post that in the comments below, and of course, make sure to subscribe for more videos like this often. And see ya!